On today's episode of The Alex Stone Show, we are exposing the racist history of Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger. Here to do it with us today is the founder of the White Rose Resistance, Seth Gruber. Are you ready? Let's go.
Stone.
Alex Stone.
Alex Stone.
Alex Stone.
I want to point out my adopted nephew, Alex Stone.
He's the host of The Alex Stone Show, and I'm pretty sure he's related to my good friend Roger Stone. That's his uncle, Alex Stone. First time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Alex Stone Show. I'm your host, Alex Stone. I am on a mission to spread the light of the gospel into every aspect of life. And yes, you heard me correctly. I did say every, including the things that most Christians do not like to discuss, such as politics. We are living in a Romans 1 generation. Yes, you heard me correctly, a Romans 1 generation. If you know anything about the book of Romans, and in particular, Romans chapter 1, we see the Apostle Paul calling out sin after sin after sin, and the progression downward of what sin leads to, which is more sin and more extreme sin. And not only that, but it becomes to the point where you no longer are just partaking in the sin, you are also approving others who do that as well. We're living in that in the United States of America. And I believe part of that is because of Planned Parenthood and the evils and atrocities that Planned Parenthood is doing and has done since 1916. Here to talk about that today is the founder of White Rose Resistance and the author of an amazing book, The 1916 Project. Please welcome my friend and brother in Christ, Seth Gruber. Seth, how are you doing today, brother?
Good. Appreciate you, Alex.
I appreciate you as well. I've wanted to have you on my show for a very long time. You know, I heard about you last year at the Believers Summit in Palm Beach, Florida. Heard you speak, phenomenal, but then got to know you through your assistant, Jonathan, and now here we are. Seth, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to talk about this Planned Parenthood thing and expose some of the racist history of Planned Parenthood and how we got to where we are today in 2025 in the 21st century with 73 million abortions that have happened since Roe v. Wade. But before we do that, could you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and a little bit about White Rose Resistance?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, raised in the pro-life space, homeschooled, Los Angeles County, behind enemy lines with the gay communists. Although I was kind of the last generation to get away with having friends that were Democrats and pro-choice and didn't want to throw you into a re-education camp gulag. I graduated high school 2010, and like shortly after that, the political division in America obviously went bonkers. But like I actually had pro-abortion friends, and they didn't think I was like the scum of the earth, and we could have like civil conversations. But I did my senior project on abortion at Whittier High School, Nixon's alma mater, because I realized I didn't have a lot of good answers to pro-abortion friends of mine, even though my mom had ran a pregnancy center while pregnant with me, and that was part of her legacy and heritage. And my high school told me I couldn't pick the topic of abortion, so I said, then I'm going to sue you for viewpoint discrimination. And so they backed off, and I did whatever the heck I wanted to. And then I went to a fake Christian college in Santa Barbara called Westmont. I just didn't realize it was woke, and I found out they had pro-abortion professors on the faculty payroll, even though they signed a statement of faith at a college whose motto is Christ preeminent in all things. So I started saying, except the prenatal Christ, apparently, who entered human history in a uterus to redeem mankind from their sins. Apparently, he wasn't preeminent. So I started saying that, you know, to be a pro-choice Christian is to commit a Christological heresy, because that would maintain that Christ was at some point fully God, but not fully human, in violation of the doctrine of the incarnation. And so I kind of raised holy hell and just decided to stay at that progressive, woke, fake Christian college. I'm not welcome on campus. I've had 3 students try to bring me on since. And YAF ended up hosting the event at the Reagan Center in downtown Santa Barbara on State Street because my own alma mater wouldn't let me on campus. So that's my background. And I realized that the problem is not necessarily a bunch of like gay communists that want to diddle the kids and kill the babies. The problem is a weak and flatulent church who ought to know better, who doesn't care. They're actually part of the problem. Everyone loves to say, like, the Edmund Burke line or whatever, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And sometimes we say these kind of quotes ad nauseum, like over and over and over again. They become, familiarity is actually like where courage goes to die. Because it's like, oh yeah, sure, right, yeah, John 3:16, right? Sent his only begotten son. Yeah, God made Adam and Eve. Oh yeah, love your neighbor as yourself. And oh yeah, courage. We say these things, and like I think we become overly familiar with them, and we almost lose sense of how significant, important they are to a functioning republic. Like without courage, nothing matters. If you're not a courageous person, who the hell cares? Why are you here? I mean, like, the whole analogy of a shepherd, like, right? Like he's a shepherd, right? And we're the sheep. It's like, yeah, you know what shepherds did? They freaking murdered like beasts. They like killed beasts that tried to kill there's a reason Jesus uses the analogies that he uses. Like we think of shepherd, Jesus meek and mild, petting the sheep and combing their fur. It's like, no, sometimes shepherds like had to like kill bears and like lions and all this stuff, right? Like, and then the whole, like the sheep know their voice, and like the reason they won't listen to someone who don't know their voice is because they're not really a shepherd. Like, I just started realizing, you know what? I'm tired of talking about the gay communists and the cultural Marxists and the kill the baby sexual revolutionary liberationists, because that's always been around. Sex cult stuff, weird gender bending stuff, like sexualizing kids, killing babies, that's been around forever. What held back wickedness was the local church who cared enough to do something about evil. And that does not represent the evangelical church by and large in the West. So when we launched the White Rose Resistance, Alex, it was to make the local church great again. It's to reawaken the local church. We do that through digital media, activism, our resistance chapters around the country. But if we don't wake up the local church, this American experiment's over. And if that happens, it will be in no small part because we tolerated killing babies for so long. So that's my background, and that's why we do what we do.
I love that, Seth, and everything about that is just beautiful. I love your upbringing. Love the fact that you, despite going to a woke liberal fake Christian college, you remain steadfast in your faith and the truth, which is needed today. Your ministry, White Rose Resistance, is all about the church, waking the church up and enraging the church to get involved in the public square and to talk about the things that really matter, like abortion, and fight back against the culture of death that is so clear for all of us to see in the United States of America. I've said this for a long time. As the church goes, so goes the nation. And the reality is that it seems as if the church has gone. The church left the scene a long time ago and decided to not talk about the things that are going on in the culture and to just preach the gospel. Well, if you're just preaching the gospel, you're only going to end up with people like Tim Keller, for example, who have this third wayism kind of thing where, you shouldn't go, head on with the issues like abortion, transgenderism, pornography in schools, et cetera, et cetera. And you are the total opposite of that. You're fighting the issues head on. You're calling them out for what they are, which are evil, sinful, disturbing, and disgusting, which is why I love you and I love your ministry so much. You started the White Rose Resistance, and you're doing a lot of documentaries. You have a second one coming out soon. You have your first book, 1916 Project, which you released a few years ago. What is the 1916 Project? What is it about? What do you expose?
Yeah, so actually, a lot has happened in a year. Sometimes it feels like a few years ago. It actually just came out last June, about a year and a half ago. And it's the hidden history, there you go, of the secular moral revolutionaries, the sexual revolution, and Planned Parenthood. Because all those things are the same. Like, you can't deal with, address, fight, reverse engineer abortion without understanding the concept of sexual revolution or sexual liberation. And you can't understand or fight against or reverse engineer sexual liberation without understanding cultural Marxism. Like, all these things go together. Like, it's very difficult to try to deal with abortion in like a cute little box. You're like, let's take out our abortion box and open it and figure out how did that happen? And then let's put it back. Let's take out our sexual revolution box and let's talk about sexual politics and Kate Millett and Simone de Beauvoir and the National Organization for Women and women's suffrage. And let's talk about that. And then let's put the box back on the shelf. And then let's take out our cultural Marxism box and our Playboy pornography box. And like that's not how things work, right, actually. Once you get to know even a little bit about the practitioners behind the sexual revolution, you start to realize, oh, wow, like they were all in bed together, and sometimes literally, but always politically and metaphorically. And you think about this today, like here's an example. People know that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in the world. Alex, what many people don't know is they're also the largest provider of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. Mm-hmm. And they're also the largest provider of the pornographic comprehensive sexuality education in America's public schools. It's called CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education. It's not the birds and the bees. It's like the liturgical arm of the religion of humanism. It's how they catechize the next generation into neo-paganism in the schools. So it touches on all this filth in the public school system. So you're like, wait, how is Planned Parenthood the largest provider of all three of those things? Because they were never an abortion organization. Abortion comes pre-packaged with all manner of paganism. So that's the first thing to understand about like why I wrote this book and what it reveals. But the number one response we got to the book and the film, which is now streaming on Daily Wire Plus, although any church can still host a screening in their church by going to the 1916project.com. It's right there. The number one response for over a year since we released the film and book is, Seth, I've never heard any of this before. And obviously, it already takes a courageous church to host this screening or to have me out. So like, just in virtue of what the project is, like Andy Stanley is not screening the film at his church, you know what I mean? Like Stephen Furtick, like TD Jakes ain't screening the film at his church. So like just the very fact of what the project is, the people behind it, the people screening it, which made it like very, very successful. I had organizations calling me being like, how the hell did you do this? Teach us how to do screenings. The fact that those are already conservative, kind of courageous pastors and churches, right. If the faithful, the courageous, those already kind of prone towards the fight, if they're the ones saying, I've never heard any of this before, how many people do you think in like the Tim Keller, Rick Warren Christianity model, or just the decent patriotic public, like they don't hate America, but they're not Christians. And they're like, isn't Christianity sort of a net positive, and they love the 4th of July, like just your normal run of the mill American. How many of those people do you think know the history of this stuff? Of course, the answer is virtually none of them. And so Hosea 4:6, God says, my people are being destroyed for lack of knowledge. If you want to understand the insanity of the 21st century, you actually have to understand the role of Planned Parenthood, because Margaret Sanger is probably the most effective and damaging influence on 21st century secular insanity and modernity than any other revolutionary that spawned out of the 20th century. That's my contention, is that like more hate flows through Sanger than almost any other individual or American in the 20th century that's yielded such great damage now. Mm-hmm. And so 1916 is when the first Planned Parenthood birth control clinic is opened. That's her first clinic. If you go to Planned Parenthood's website, guys, you'll actually learn that Planned Parenthood treats 1916 as their birthday. Yeah. So that's not just my opinion. They count that year as the beginning of Planned Parenthood. And you're going to learn Nazi links, Hitler links, KKK, the KKK links, eugenics links, Playboy pornography, pedophile links. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's quite shocking. And as one of the largest and best funded 501c3s in human history, it's time that we expose who Planned Parenthood really is.
No, we must absolutely expose them, because, like you said, most people don't know any of this information at all. Like, I would consider myself a pretty well-informed person on a lot of topics, but when I was watching the documentary, I watched it right before you came on, and I was like, I don't know any of this. I'm glad you mentioned the Nazi part, because while I was watching, I was thinking, I wonder if there's any Nazi connections. Like, I wonder if Adolf Hitler was inspired by any of this. And then like 2 minutes later, you start talking about that. Like there are Nazi Germany links, to Planned Parenthood. It's all evil. It's all just really disgusting. Margaret Sanger, you mentioned these people as like evangelists, but with an upside down, twisted kind of evil worldview. And, on page 66 of your book, Sanger was an advocate for all things sexual, an evangelist of the lascivious and perverted. If it felt good or could feel good, she was an apologist for it. And I mean, that's exactly what Planned Parenthood is today. You just said, they are the largest producers and not producers, but they give out the most cross-sex hormones, chemically castrating children, physically castrating children, probably too. It's evil and disgusting. But it all started with Margaret Sanger, who was an open racist, by the way. Before we talk more about this, I want to just watch the trailer for this film, because it is like it can be one of the most influential films in all of America if many people find out about it. I just want to watch this real quick.
And in the culture wars and in the fight for life is that abortion is not just one issue among many. Abortion is almost the linchpin upon which the liberal establishment swings. But what happens when you pull out a linchpin? The door falls off.
It takes a long time to go from a few intellectuals believing some bad ideas to bringing those ideas into the culture more and more and more until they bear fruit. The answer how we got here is because of the silence and inaction of the church.
Somebody might say, well, Margaret Sanger, she didn't quite know exactly what she was doing. Well, first of all, you're speaking from ignorance, because she wrote about herself and she wrote what her plans were, so much so that she, impressed Adolf Hitler. How do you impress Hitler?
My father walks up to me wearing a BLM shirt and he says to me, why are you out here fighting a white man's issue? But he was a walking poster child for all things CRT, because in critical race theory, you see racism in all things and at all times. Even when a 6'4", 260-pound black man is trying to save a baby.
We're going to expose and discover who the real Margaret Sanger was and how her attack and assault against the family in America explains our current culture of death and upside-down world that we're living in today. This is where it all started. It was here that Sanger opened up her first unlicensed, illegal birth control clinic in 1916.
Study the past, not just to understand what happened then, but to understand what's happening now.
This is a Leviathan. Doc Howe. It's a fitting place to remember what happens when bad ideas are taken to their logical conclusion.
We bless the holy name of Jesus and we shout, let the baby live. Let the baby live. Let the baby live.
Stop waiting for someone else to grow a righteous culture of life for you and on your family's behalf. It will not happen. If not you, who? If not now, when?
That trailer gives me chills, like goosebumps. But, just imagine how you're going to feel when you watch the film, guys. This film exposes so much about the history of Margaret Sanger, about the history of Planned Parenthood, and leads us to where we are today with over 63 million babies that have been aborted because of Margaret Sanger and because of Planned Parenthood. Now, Margaret Sanger was like super racist. Could you talk about that real quick and kind of what she believed about Black people, Jews, people that she didn't like, and why she wanted to start Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, Alex, it's interesting, right? Because you can read any number of articles online that will tell you that Sanger was not a racist. But there were a lot of racists in that era, so she accidentally rubbed shoulders with a few of them. You'll read these sort of like coverage where it's just kind of like, no, she wasn't a racist. She denounced racism, but there was some eugenicism, and she did believe in sort of perfecting the gene pool. There's been so much like very careful, let me say, like managing Sanger's legacy. And why is that, by the way? It's because, people forget this. Like, she used to be called the patron saint of feminism. Like, Sanger was the epitome, the representation of what the feminists wanted. This sort of like strength. She was a builder. She was a fundraiser. And she was trailblazing the path that so many later feminists of the free love era would walk. I mean, what, I don't know, what like C.S. Lewis or like Chesterton, or R.C. Sproul, or what Schaefer was to many of us and our parents, Sanger was to the free love feminists of the 60s, right? Because she died in the 60s, Sanger, right? So she had done all of her trailblazing for the next generation of women in the early 20th century. But what really showed the truth about how the left has managed, very carefully curated Sanger's legacy, was 2020. So in 2019, you get the 1619 Project. Though it says America is systemically racist, and this is because our real birthday should be 1619, not 1776, because the first black slaves came to American shores in 1619, and they're like, that event was so significant to our racist current DNA that should be America's birthday. And anyways, there's a lot of historical revisionism in there. The author won a Pulitzer, and then you had like liberal atheistic historians writing letter to the Pulitzer board of directors asking them to remove the Pulitzer from Nicole Hannah-Jones, who wrote the 1619 Project. So like it got left-leaning criticisms of its historical revisionism, not just from the right. Anyway, but that's about 9 months before George Floyd. And then that summer of 2020, when everyone's burning everything to the ground and screaming racism, people forgot that like the CNN and the media started calling what we call the summer of love, but the fiery burning down stuff. Actually, the media, Alex, started calling it the 1619 riots. And Nicole Hannah-Jones, the author of the 1619 Project, responded to that on Twitter. No, this is like super important to understand the canceling of Sanger and the revisionism. And I'm getting there. I know your audience it sounds like it's not connected, but it's crazy. Watch. So then she said, "I'm so proud." That was the tweet that Nicole Hannah-Jones put out. But it was responding to people calling the summer of burning 2020 the 1619 riots. She's like, yeah, thank you. I'm so proud, like they are. And so what's that an admission of by the media? They're saying like, if everything was systemically racist, root and branch, and that's what America is, then these black people, they're justified, even though it's a bunch of white Antifa leftists, by the way, dressed up in masks, anyways. But they're saying like, they're justified in burning and looting and pillaging and murdering and destroying many black-owned businesses. Why? Because America is so systemically racist. So they're justified in doing this. I think it was it Don Lemon or was it Chris Cuomo? I think it was Chris Cuomo who said like infamously that summer, like, you shouldn't be yelling at them. You should be asking what drove your fellow Americans into the streets like this. And so then there becomes this sort of canceling of anything that's perceived as racist. Remember, like Aunt Jemima was the big hilarious example, the syrup lady, right? Apparently we had to cancel Aunt Jemima, and I think some other cracker company or something. Anyways, because they're like, it's racist, right? So it's like cancel anything that was started in racism, allegedly, right? Well, guess what this led to? Because the revolution always eats its own. The 1619 Project revolutionaries, George Floyd, BLM, everything's racist, racism. That crowd ends up putting Planned Parenthood in their crosshairs in the summer of 2020. And they said, hey, your founder was a racist and a eugenicist. Now, this is hilarious because it's like, wait a second, conservatives have been saying that for 70 years. But you said that we were conspiracy theorists, and you said that we were cuckoos, and that we were just trying to smear the left by like debunking Sanger. Now the left who favors abortion, and they're dressed in Antifa stuff and they're screaming about racism. Now the left is attacking the left, and they're saying, Planned Parenthood, we're coming for you next because your founder, your organization, her founded that whole thing. Yeah, it was started in racism and eugenicism. And so, dude, I'm sitting here. I'm like, I'm here for it all. I'm like, I want an extra large Dr. Pepper. I want lots of butter on my popcorn. I'm front row. I'm here for all of it. I love it when the revolution eats its own. It's very entertaining to me. Maybe it's a little bit of my flesh, but it is highly entertaining to me, Alex. And so then Planned Parenthood of Greater New York comes out because, Planned Parenthood has chapters and stuff. So Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. The director's name was Karen Seltzer, which I find like really funny. Like Karen, like a Karen, and seltzer. A seltzer? You mean a light alcoholic spritzer? That's freaking hilarious. You could not have picked a more appropriate name for a white feminist liberal living in New York.
That's great.
Karen
That's great.
Seltzer. Anyways, so she probably owns a lot of cats, but I just thought that was really funny. So Karen Seltzer comes out and she says, "We're done making excuses for our founder and the damage that she did to communities of color." That was the quote. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then they stopped giving out the Margaret Sanger Award, which I know Nancy Pelosi has received. And then the Planned Parenthood, they owned this huge mega center in Manhattan, New York. It recently shut down, by the way, because of, thankfully, some of the Trump defunding, actually, of the Trump administration's defunding of Planned Parenthood, they couldn't afford the lease on this building. But it was called the Sanger Center. So this mega Planned Parenthood clinic in New York City, which we filmed outside of, Alex, it was called the Sanger Center. So they took her name off, they renamed it. And then New York City took off the sign on that street corner that called it the Margaret Sanger Square. So a complete canceling of their founder after decades of defending her and decades of saying she wasn't a racist. She wasn't a racist. She was not a racist. And suddenly, because the radical left is attacking you, they say, they go, yeah, she was a racist. So we open up the film of the book with this question, so then what's the real story?
Right.
So what is the story here behind Sanger and the founding of Planned Parenthood? And so was she a racist? Well, listen, there's this quote that people like to say, it's not what she meant. And she said, "We do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." And the black minister is the one who can help abuse that notion if any of his more rebellious members think that. And my brother John Amachukwu loves to say, he's like, "Then I'm a rebellious Negro, baby, and I'm going to wake up my other black brothers and sisters." But there's so much more to her. You could potentially see how she was saying, we don't want word to get out. We don't want people to think that what we're doing is racist because we disavow that. But maybe it could be perceived as that. So we don't want that to be the rumor. I don't think that's what she meant, but one could see how maybe she meant that. But then how about this? In 1939, she launches the Negro Project. It was one of the first big initiatives of the American Birth Control League, who changed their name to Planned Parenthood in 1942. And here's the opening proposal of the Negro Project, a proposal by Sanger. Here's the opening line. Quote, "The mass of Negroes, particularly in the South, are still breeding carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and least fit." Then she later said, "Birth control is not contraception thoughtlessly and indiscriminately practiced. Birth control means the cultivation and release of the better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds who threaten the blossoming of the finest flowers of American civilization." And then her founding board member, when she launched Planned Parenthood as the American Birth Control League in 1921, her founding board member was the exalted Cyclops of the Massachusetts KKK.
Jeez, dude. I actually just posted that we do not want word to give out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. I posted that on Threads, a liberal cesspool, of course. And all of them just, immediately started attacking me. And they were like, this was debunked 10 years ago when it appeared. If it was really debunked, why would Planned Parenthood just totally change their position and shift on Margaret Sanger, during 2020? It's all wild, it's all insane, it's all crazy, and it leads to where we are today. Of course, one of the I think most important podcasts that you've ever done was the one on JD Unwin, Sex and Culture. Talking about 96 different cultures that and their sexual norms. And how 3 generations later, they were overtaken by a more monogamous, more, social energy, society. And I can't help but think that this is where we are today, because 1916, of course, Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger starts, American Birth Control League. And then, here we are in 2025, a little over 3 generations later, with still more abortion, transgenderism, chemical castration of children, pornography in schools, et cetera, et cetera. What is next? What comes next after this, Seth? Well, I think we get overtaken by a more monogamous society, because we have rejected Jesus and we've accepted this cultural Marxism, these demonic, evil ideas that come from people like Karl Marx, Margaret Sanger, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think we get overtaken soon because we still accept this and still call this our norm now, even though it shouldn't be normal in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, profound questions, Alex. Actually, there's one more thing that happens before you kind of lose your culture and civilization, or you go past what's called like a Rubicon line.
Okay.
So that means the point of no return. That last thing, by the way, is pedophilia. And it's the legalization of sex with children.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the last things that'll happen before you don't get your civilization back.
Right.
And then the final thing is like the overt persecution of Christians who stand against the liberal order. So we're not there yet, but we've had a lot of indicators that we're getting close, haven't we? And my episode on the Seth Gruber show, my own show, Alex, just the other day or yesterday, was about Los Angeles's kiddie stroll minor sex market on Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles, with 11 and 12-year-olds dressed in lingerie selling their bodies and returning the cash to their pimps. You're like, wait, is this like the French Revolution? Like, is this India? Like, no, that's downtown Los Angeles. And that's happening right now. And you can thank Scott Wiener. Yes, that is his last name. The California Democrat legislator who sponsored that bill, and Newsom signed it. It's a pimp shield law, so it handcuffed police officers to not be able to apprehend and arrest minors loitering with the intent to prostitute themselves unless they were absolutely sure that this was someone over 18. But with like fake wigs and makeup and fake eyelashes, like it's very difficult for law enforcement to know with beyond a shadow of a doubt that the individual is over 18 years old. So now you can go on Google Earth and literally just see little girls standing on the streets of downtown Los Angeles prostituting
on Google Earth.
And yeah, no one's doing anything about it. No one's doing anything about it. Almost no one's talking about the story right now. I just did a whole episode on it. And so what's my point is like, those are some of the like early signs that like, if we're now down with this as a society and we're not going to address it or do anything meaningful about it, like this does not bode well for our civilization. And so you mentioned this interesting book that J.D. Unwin writes in 1934. It's called Sex and Culture. And he studies, so he's very clear in the introduction to his book. Actually, he's saying that he's not a commentator. He's saying, I'm not doing opinion. He says that in the introduction, like I'm presenting you the data and the research. I'm not telling you why I think this is. I'm not providing opinion. Here you go. Like it's up to us, Alex, to determine what that means and why. But he studies 86 civilizations over a 5,000-year period. And finds a 100% correlation between sexually monogamous, heterosexual marriage-based cultures and cultural advancement, and a 100% correlation between sexually liberated, sexually free, no guardrails societies and the death of that civilization. By the way, for the White Rose Resistance, for anyone interested for more about what we do, it's thewhiterose.life, thewhiterose.life. And I'm not aware of any liberal academic or left-leaning academic that's actually discredited J.D. Unwin's work, Alex, which is fascinating. I mean, it's 91 years. The book was published 91 years ago. And the observations, I mean, 86 civilizations over a 5,000-year period. And you can read through the whole, I mean, I actually have it right here. And it's like, you go, okay, wow. Well, like you can just go through and read all the different civilizations, the general survey, the analysis of the cultural evidence, and look at the whole thing. And it's quite sobering because you realize that we're getting awfully close.
Yes.
To the same kinds of activities, legalizing the same kinds of things, or decriminalizing the same kinds of things that for 5,000 years, any other society that's done that, it's over. You're done. You lose your society. And that's just because that's how human nature is. That's how God made us. Like you may not like the fact that the world works the way that it works, liberal atheist, but you live in God's world, and eventually the consequences of your decisions will catch up with you, because eventually you will actually suffer the consequences of defying the laws that God has made. And so he makes this powerful point in his book that human societies are free to choose either to display great social energy or to enjoy sexual freedoms. And it appears that they cannot do both for more than one generation. He says that the whole of human history does not contain one single instance of a group becoming civilized unless it had been absolutely monogamous, nor was there any example of a group retaining its culture after it adopted less rigorous customs. And so he said that the most powerful combination, the highest flourishing of culture would be the best way to put it, was the combination of prenuptial chastity with absolute monogamy. And that civilizations that retained this combination for at least 3 generations exceeded all other cultures in every area, in the arts, in literature, in the sciences, in food, in furniture, in engineering, in agriculture, in architecture. But he said only 3 out of the 86 cultures studied ever attained this level. So what about sexual freedom? If total sexual freedom was embraced by a culture, that culture collapsed within 3 generations to the lowest state of flourishing. And by the way, he defines a generation by like 30 to 33 years. We define it differently now. So when he says, if you adopt full-blown sexual freedom liberation, you'll lose your civilization within 3 generations. That means like 90 to 99 years. Okay, somewhere around there would be 3 generations as he defines it. And total sexual freedom cultures descended to the lowest state of flourishing, which he described as inert or a dead level of conception. And it was characterized by people who have little interest in much else other than their own wants and needs. Does that sound like America right now?
Sounds exactly. It's almost as if Genesis 1:26 is written directly for us, and we should listen to it and be bound by it. Because if not, we're going to lose our culture, and that's exactly where we are today. Where most of our culture, I wouldn't say most of our culture, but a lot of our culture, a lot of our society is not listening to God. Okay, yep. And when we begin to forget about God, when we begin to reject God, it leads to what we see in J.D. Unwin's book, Sex and Culture, with the total downfall of a civilization and then being overtaken by a more monogamous, more social energy.
We've been talking about like very intellectual and heady stuff, Alex, but let's just bring it down for everyone, like really simple, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, if you're listening to Alex and I, do you know any addicts, listener? Do you know any addicts? Alcohol addicts, porn addicts, sex addict, drug addict, video game addict. Okay, name the thing. Okay, so you're thinking of someone you know, okay? All right. Aren't they wonderfully involved citizens, super unselfish, always on time to your kids' birthdays? They never miss a special event or family gathering or holiday. They can always be relied upon for their word, right? Ha 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 ha. Obviously, I'm being facetious. No. Addicts are the least reliable people. They're the most selfish. They're the most narcissistic. They're the biggest navel gazers, and they only care about their own wants and needs. It's what C.S. Lewis meant by the abolition of man, that the head rules the belly through the chest. And so what is the abolition of man? Everyone has heard of that book by C.S. Lewis. What is the abolition of man? It's men without chests. So the intellect is supposed to rule over the appetite, the belly, right? Like feed me, right? Desire. Through the chest, and the chest represents virtue, honor, and morality. So the abolition of man is men without chests. Well, if the intellect, the rational man, that's what separates us from the animals, Alex. If the rational man is supposed to rule over the appetite through virtue, honor, and morality, then men without chests means that the intellect rules over the appetite with nothing in between, with nothing to balance or temper it in between. That's an addict, right? There's no chest. Well, I want more porn. Well, I want more candy. Well, I want more fast food. Well, I want more video games. Give it to me now. Feed me now. I want this thing. I'm going to go do it. I want this thing. I'm going to go buy it. Well, what about your family? What about your friends? What about responsibility? What about stewarding your body? What about honoring God? What about your local church community? What about your friends? No, feed me now. Right. So like, I know we were talking about like heady things and all this sounds like, wow, like sexual liberation and 3 generations and weird kooky sex stuff and you get taken over. No, just think about the addicts in your life. What if everyone lived like that? What if everyone was an addict in some way to the belly, to the desires of the flesh? Yeah. Now picture all of that. Picture 330 million Americans functioning like that. You're done. You're done. You can't even get people like that to show up on time for your kid's birthday, right? Or to honor their word. You think those people are going to go die and bleed out for America to fight enemies overseas or the enemies within? No, they just want their slop, their video games, and their porn. That it's actually not that complicated. Once you give yourself over to passion, right? What does James 1 say? Passion, when fully grown, gives birth to death. That like, oh, the Bible got it right again. Like, well, I'm just applying that to what we're seeing happen in America. So it's actually really that simple. And so, by the way, what are civilizations with great social energy? Absolutely monogamous and marriage based. Why? Well, studies have shown that married men get the most sex, first of all. So unless you're an actual like pornographer or pimp, but like otherwise those people we need to just throw in jail. But like married men get the most sex. So they're the most sexually satisfied. Well, when you start doing a ton of awesome sex stuff with your wife, you know what happens? Babies. Yeah, babies get created. So now you're like, well, now I've got to provide for these people. So I'm getting sex with my wife. By the way, studies have also shown, Alex, that like men who help with household chores, so like cleaning up laundry, dishes, etc., they get more sex. Actually, so now you're like, well, now I need to serve my family because I've got children. Because the awesome sex I was having with my wife, which I got way more of it than the non-married people, it created like people got created. It was an act so comprehensive and unitive that 9 months later it required a name. And so now I got to provide for these little people we created. And now we've got 5 of them. So I got to work my ass off. And and then my wife really appreciates it when I work my ass off. So then I get more sex. And so sex is why men build. Don't take that the wrong way. People, they're like, "Are you Seth? You sound like Alfred Kinsey." No. I'm not saying we're sexual beings. I'm saying that Kinsey had it wrong, and so do the Christian fundamentalists who won't talk about sex with their children at all because they treat it as something taboo and bad. I'm saying it's a glorious, beautiful thing in a covenanted marriage, and sex is a powerful aspect of who we are. We all understand that. We're not sexual beings. That's not all we are, but it's a powerful aspect of who we are, right? And in the right order, it becomes very powerful because it creates people. And then people need to be fed and cared for. And then families flourish when they have a mother and a father who love them in a low conflict marriage under the same roof in the same home. And then now, I got something to die for. Because like, I don't want my children to inherit a communist America where Christianity is illegal. Put a butch, bald, second wave feminist majoring in lesbian dance theory against me, Jason Storms, AJ Hurley, or Charlie Kirk any day, and who wins? Who wins?
All of you guys.
A married heterosexual man who has children to die for. Absolutely. The sexually addicted have nothing to live for. We have everything to die for. When families live like that, they work harder. They care more. They're more unselfish. Wait, are you saying that just like building families makes you like a harder worker and like more unselfish and like, oh, shocker. What if everyone lived like that? What's that called? It's called great social energy. Yeah. That's what builds cultures and societies and safeguards it for the next generation. That's all we're talking about. Yeah. But as soon as you go sexually liberated, you eventually go to child sacrifice. Those are the 2 sins always linked in the Old Testament. First, it's Asherah, Ishtar worship, like sex cult, weird stuff. And then they sacrifice the kids. Sexual revolution always comes before child sacrifice. It's the same 2 pagan gods today. And it's time that the church wakes up. So that's what we do. Right. Alex, that's what we do to wake up the local church to their ancient calling. We were made to fight. And I think post Charlie, there's been a collective warming of the hearts of men. It's almost like a collective Holy Spirit whisper has been whispering into the ears of young men post Charlie saying, you were made to fight.
Yes, absolutely. Seth, we're running out of time. Where can people find you and find all of your amazing work?
TheWhiteRose.life is our website. That's the hub for everything, or SethGruber.com, either one. TheWhiteRose.life.life. People can join us in Washington, D.C. the day before the March for Life on January 22nd at Life or Death Con. We have Nolene Cedra, Dr. George Grant, Steve Dace, Abby Johnson, Megan Basham, AJ Hurley, and more. LifeOrDeathCon.com, although TheWhiteRose.life will point you there. LifeOrDeathCon.com. And then march with us on January 23rd at the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. If you want to host this screening at your church, or go tell your pastor to be a man and to host a screening, go to the1916project.com, the1916project.com for a church to host a screening of the film. But it is streaming on Daily Wire Plus right now. You can watch the whole film. And very soon we'll be announcing the extended edition curriculum of the 1916 Project, which is unseen, unused footage from the film, including is it a 5 or 6 part roundtable discussion with Bishop Wooden from the film, with George Grant, with myself, and with Bill Federer, diving deeper into all these ideas with a whole accompanying curriculum for church groups, small groups, Christian schools, Bible studies, and all of this. We'll be announcing that soon as well. But you can figure out how to get involved with us at thewhiterose.life.
That's amazing. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Seth, for joining today. I really appreciate it. Your insight and wisdom is always welcome on this show, and I would love to have you back on very, very soon. Guys, go to thewhiterose.life to find more about Seth Gruber and what they are doing. Also, if you could, go to mypillow.com and use the promo code GENZ, G-E-N-Z, all one word. You can get a discount of up to 66% off of your order. It is one of the best deals that you could ever have. Thank you all so much for listening. God bless you all, and goodbye.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The MyPillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, MyPillow 2.0. When I invented MyPillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. MyPillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. MyPillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of MyPillow.
Now's the time to go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your MyPillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
MyPillow.com